While I was breaking my back at the factory, paying for her tuition and our apartment, she was tasting warm sour cream for grades behind the director's door. We met when we were barely more than kids, the kind of people who thought we knew what love was. We sat next to each other during a school assembly that neither of us wanted to attend. She made a comment under her breath about how the principal talked like he was trying to sell used cars, and I laughed, not because it was funny, but because she said it. That was the first time I really saw her. Her name was Elisa. We started talking after that assembly. Nothing serious at first, small talk in the hallways, quick glances in class, a few messages back and forth about homework. But somewhere along the way, it shifted. Before I knew it, we were walking home together, sharing headphones, laughing at stupid jokes that didn't even make sense. The kind of connection that feels easy and inevitable, like gravity. We started dating in our final year of school, and while most couples our age drifted apart after graduation, we only got closer. We made promises, not the kind whispered in a rush of hormones and adrenaline, but the kind that take root slowly, through long walks, late-night conversations. When she got into university, she cried on the phone the moment she saw the acceptance letter. I remember her voice shaking as she said, "I didn't think I'd make it." Of course she made it. She was brilliant and determined. What she didn't have, though, was money. And neither did her family. So I stepped up. It wasn't even a question. We were a team. That was always how I saw us. She had the brain, the fire, the future. I had two hands and the will to use them. I took a job at a local factory right after graduation, working long shifts in a space that reeked of oil, sweat, and tired men who stopped believing in their dreams a decade ago. It wasn't glamorous, but it was steady, and it paid just enough to keep a roof over our heads and cover her tuition. The first few months were hard, but we made it work. She studied, I worked. She'd come home late from lectures or study groups, and I'd already have dinner waiting. On weekends, I'd sleep in while she tiptoed around the kitchen trying not to wake me. We fell into a rhythm, and I was proud. Proud to build something with my own hands that gave her the freedom to chase what she wanted most, a degree with distinction, a future full of possibilities. I never complained about the late nights, or the times she snapped at me out of stress, or the days when I came home too tired to eat but still washed the dishes because I knew she'd had an exam. That's what love is, right? But things started changing, and not all at once. That's the worst part, how quietly it crept in, how slow the unraveling was, until one day I looked around and didn't recognize the life I had sacrificed so much to build. It began with her phone. She used to leave it everywhere: kitchen counter, bathroom sink, coffee table, like it was just an object. But then, suddenly, it was always with her. She never put it down, never left it charging in the other room. And if it buzzed while we were talking, she'd turn it over or slide it into her pocket with a quick flick of her wrist, like whatever it was, I shouldn't see it. I told myself it was just stress. She was working harder than ever, trying to stay at the top of her class, balancing final projects and job applications. I didn't want to be that insecure boyfriend who questions everything. I kept my mouth shut. But it wasn't just the phone. She stopped talking to me the way she used to. Conversations that once lasted hours became surface-level exchanges. What she ate for lunch, which class was annoying, who said something stupid in a group project. Nothing real. Nothing about us. And when I tried to bring it up, she brushed me off, saying she was just tired, or that I was reading into things too much. She stopped touching me, too. Slowly, until I realized it had been weeks since we last kissed like we meant it. Months since we'd made love without it feeling like she was somewhere else in her head. And still, I made excuses, cooked her dinner, washed her clothes. I believed that maybe this was just what long-term relationships went through. But then came the message. One night, as she sat beside me on the couch, scrolling through her phone, I leaned over to ask her something about the weekend. And that's when I saw it, just for a second, before she flipped the screen away. The name at the top of the message read, Director. And the message said, "Tonight, like we planned. Be ready." She didn't notice I'd seen it. She just smiled at me, distracted, said something vague about being tired, and went to take a shower. I sat there on the couch, staring at the blank television screen, the words echoing in my head like a warning siren I couldn't turn off. Tonight, like we planned. Be ready. It didn't make sense, not yet. But something in my chest tightened, and I couldn't breathe properly for the rest of the evening. I didn't confront her. For the first time in our relationship, I stopped assuming the best. After that message, just a few words on a screen, half hidden and instantly dismissed, something in me began to shift. It was the realization that I could no longer afford to live inside the comfort of blind trust, not when small details had started whispering to me louder than her words ever did. I didn't accuse her right away and didn't ask who the director was or what it was they had planned for that night. I didn't raise my voice or demand to see her phone. Instead, I did what I had never done in our entire relationship. I started making mental notes. How she began coming home later and later, always blaming study groups, lab work, or professor consultations. How she started showering immediately after getting home, before even greeting me properly, and how she kept her phone on silent, screen down, sometimes even taking it with her into the bathroom, something she'd never done before. She was slipping, not just from me, but from the version of herself that used to share everything without hesitation. The woman I once knew would show me silly memes she saw during the day or ask me to proofread her essays late at night when she was too tired to tell the difference between effect and effect. But now, when I offered to help, she told me it was fine, that she had it under control, that I didn't need to worry. And yet, I did, because the warmth in her voice wasn't there anymore. Her kisses had become brief and polite. Because I caught her smiling at her phone one evening, a slow, private smile I hadn't seen directed at me in months. I told myself I needed clarity, not confrontation, and for that, I'd need more than a gut feeling. So I started with someone who'd know more than I ever could. Her friend Lyra. Now, I hadn't spoken much to Lyra before. I knew her name, had seen her a handful of times at our place when Elisa invited her over to study or hang out. But I remembered something Elisa once told me, almost in passing. Back when we first moved in together, Lyra's had this ridiculous crush on you since high school. Don't even make eye contact with her. I hadn't thought much of it then. But now, it seemed like a thread I could pull. So I did. I messaged her casually, said I was hoping to plan something for Elisa's birthday and wanted to ask her about a few ideas. She seemed surprised to hear from me, but agreed to meet for coffee. The first meeting was simple. Light conversation, a few laughs, nothing intense. But I could tell she was curious, not just about why I reached out, but about me. She looked at me the way someone looks at a person they've studied from afar for years, and now they're finally close enough to examine the details. Over the next week, we met twice more. I was kind, attentive, and most importantly patient, and that was enough. One night, she broke. She leaned in across the table, her voice low, her expression uncomfortable, like she had carried something too heavy for too long and was finally ready to put it down. She's been going to his office a lot, she said. The director's. I mean, she always says it's academic stuff, mentorship, career guidance, whatever. But one time, we were supposed to get coffee after class, and she said she'd be quick. I waited for 20 minutes outside the building, and when she finally came out, she paused. She was adjusting her skirt. Her hair was a mess, and she was flushed. I didn't say anything. I didn't want to believe what I was thinking, but I think you deserve to know. I nodded slowly. She wasn't lying because she looked tired of holding a secret that wasn't hers to keep. I thanked her and didn't ask for more. She gave me more than enough. That night, I sat in the kitchen, lights off, staring at the cold surface of the table, her old phone clutched in my hand, the one she'd left behind when she upgraded last month, thinking I'd probably just toss it in a drawer or sell it for parts. But I didn't, and I turned it on. It took a while to charge, and when it finally lit up, I braced myself. There wasn't much left. Most apps had been logged out of, most photos deleted, but one messaging app was still active, and it didn't take long to find what I wasn't ready for. Conversations, dozens of them with him, director. Most of them were harmless at first, professional, even friendly, but then, somewhere along the timeline, they started changing. He called her beautiful, she sent a selfie. He joked about late-night tutoring, and she didn't correct him. Eventually, they stopped being vague. I still think about your hands on me during that meeting. He has no idea, does he? Poor guy. If I graduate top of the class, you'll know why. I sat there, scrolling through each message, not blinking, not moving, just reading, until I felt something behind my eyes begin to press, so I shut off the phone, put it back in the drawer, and I went to the bedroom. She was asleep, and I stood there, looking at her for the first time not as my girlfriend, not as the woman I loved, supported and sacrificed for, but as a stranger who was now hiding inside someone I used to know. I climbed into bed beside her. She stirred, reached for me out of habit, her arm draping over my chest, and I let it because I wasn't ready yet. In the days that followed, I moved through our shared routine. I had stepped into the role of an actor playing a version of myself in a life that no longer felt real. I smiled when expected, asked the right questions about her classes, even brushed her hair back from her face as we stood in the kitchen together, and she told me how exhausted she was from group work, which I now knew often ended in one-on-one meetings in a locked office with a man who offered more than just academic guidance. I didn't break character because I wasn't ready to confront her. I needed something more than screenshots and whispers from people on the outside. I needed to see it, to witness the reality she had buried so deeply beneath excuses, half-truths, and her growing indifference to the life we had once dreamed about together. I needed something undeniable, something that would ensure that there would be no path for her to escape, no version of the story she could twist into a lie that cast her as the victim and me as the fool. So I reached out to someone I hadn't spoken to in months, my old friend Leo, a guy I'd grown up with, who had drifted into the world of drone tech and amateur surveillance. He liked the challenge of building machines that could see what people couldn't. Back in high school, we used to joke that he'd end up working for the government or spying on cheating husbands. Turns out, he ended up doing a bit of both, and today, I needed exactly that. When I called, I tell him everything and said I needed to watch a window in the university administration building. High up, no curtains, corner view. I needed to know if he could get a drone in range and keep it there for at least a few minutes at a time without anyone noticing. He asked a few questions, mostly technical, then said he could be ready within a week. "You sure you want to see whatever's going on in there?" he asked before we hung up. "I already know. I just need to prove it to myself." So we set it up. While Elisa left for her evening lectures, carrying her notebook and her carefully constructed lies, I coordinated with Leo, met him on campus under the pretense of grabbing coffee, and helped him map out the exact angles we'd need. The drone was small, barely larger than my palm, and almost silent. He told me it could hover near the window from across the courtyard and stay in position for up to 20 minutes before needing a recharge. We didn't have to worry about being seen. The building's upper floors faced a mostly empty lot and a few trees, and no one ever looked up from their screens anymore, not even the people being watched. The first flight didn't give us much. The room was empty, lights off, blinds half drawn. But the second flight, 2 days later, captured something. It started with the sound of keys turning, then the door opening, then her voice, low and familiar. Then his voice, deeper, smug, relaxed. The door clicked shut, and though we couldn't see everything, we could see enough. Her bag on the table, his hand on her back, the way she leaned against the desk while he moved closer. I watched the footage in Leo's apartment, sitting on his couch while he hovered nervously nearby, not knowing whether to say something or just stay quiet. And honestly, I didn't want him to speak. I needed silence, not just around me, but inside me, because if I let even one word escape, I didn't trust myself to stay composed. They kissed, he pulled her into him, and she didn't resist. I watched the entire thing, every gesture, every expression, every casual, intimate touch that made it clear this wasn't the first time, and it wouldn't be the last. When the video ended, Leo looked at me and said, "Man, I'm sorry," but I wasn't, because I had seen it with my own eyes. Now I had no doubts left, and could stop pretending. I thanked Leo, told him I'd be in touch, and walked home. Elisa was already home when I arrived, sitting on the couch, flipping through her notes, acting like nothing had happened. She looked up, smiled, and asked if I wanted something to eat. I told her I wasn't hungry. She asked how my day was. I told her it was fine. And then, I did something I didn't think I'd be able to do. I sat beside her, wrapped an arm around her shoulder, and kissed her on the forehead like everything was normal. Because for now, it had to be. I wasn't ready yet to destroy her. I wanted it done right, so I continued to play the part. I made dinner, washed her clothes, listened to her talk about her professors, her friends, her future. I nodded in the right places, laughed when expected, touched her gently in ways that reminded her that I was still here, still pretending. And all the while, I collected more footage. Elisa still greeted me at the door with a tired smile, still kicked off her shoes and sighed as if the weight of the world had been carried across her shoulders just for me to notice. She still asked what I wanted for dinner, still leaned against me sometimes while brushing her teeth, still played the role of the overworked student, the ambitious girlfriend, the woman I had once promised a future. But I no longer responded as the man she thought I was. I knew now that I wouldn't confront her in some messy, impulsive scene. No shouting in parking lots, no begging for explanations, no shaky-voiced ultimatums. That would be too small for what this had become, too merciful. And in truth, I didn't want revenge in the theatrical sense of the word. I wanted her to see, to truly understand the depth of what she had broken, to know what it feels like when trust collapses quietly beneath you. I spent my evenings documenting, organizing, and constructing the narrative I knew I would one day present not to her, but to the people who mattered. Every photo I had taken of her walking out of the university at strange hours, flushed cheeks, smooth skirt, phone in hand, went into a labeled folder. Every drone recording was timestamped, clipped, and backed up 3 times. The screenshots from her old phone, though grainy, were cataloged and enhanced. The testimony I now carried from Lyra, her friend, her former confidant, the one who had seen the signs before I ever did, and who had, with equal parts guilt and relief, agreed to speak on record if needed. She deserves to know what she did, she told me during one of our final meetings. Not just to you, but to herself. It was enough, and still, I waited because the moment had to be right. Her parents called to say they were coming to visit. It wasn't unusual. They tried to come once every few months, mostly to see how she was doing, whether she needed help with tuition or supplies or emotional support. I'd always been polite with them, respectful even, though I sensed that her father had never quite approved of me, the factory job, the modest apartment, the lack of a university degree to match hers. I was supportive, yes. Stable, yes. But I wasn't who he pictured standing beside his daughter in a cap and gown photo at graduation. This time, though, I welcomed their visit with a warmth I hadn't felt in weeks, because now I knew the ending was near. We spent the day before they arrived cleaning the apartment. She was in unusually good spirits, scrubbing surfaces and folding blankets as if nothing were out of place. I helped. I kept up the smile and even suggested a menu for dinner that I knew her mother loved, a quiet touch of hospitality, the kind that would set the stage just right. When they arrived the next evening, we greeted them like a couple in sync, polite, affectionate, comfortably worn into each other. We drank tea, talked about Jake, her cousin's new baby, the weather. And when Elisa offered a toast, thanking her parents for everything they'd done to help her reach this point in her life, I raised my glass too and waited. After dessert, when the table was cleared and conversation had softened into warm, half-sincere laughs, I stood up slowly and walked to the bookshelf near our TV. From behind a row of old textbooks, I pulled out a small black flash drive. "I want to say something," I said. Elisa blinked, confused. Her parents looked up. "I want to talk about everything," I continued, and then I pressed play. The recording from the drone, her voice, his voice. The faint scrape of a chair leg on tile. The way she laughed, breathless. The way he said her name. Elisa went still, utterly still, the blood draining from her face so fast it left her lips pale. Her mother's hand trembled around her teacup. Her father said nothing for a long moment, just stared at her, then at me, then back again, as though waiting for someone to tell him this was all a cruel mistake. But no one did, because it wasn't. The recording ended. Silence took its place, heavy and irreversible. "I didn't want to do this here," I said finally. "But you all deserve to know. Especially you," I added, looking at her father. "What is this?" he asked quietly. "It's the truth," I replied. The truth she didn't tell anyone. Her mother began to cry, slow and shaking, hands clutched in her lap as if trying to hold something together inside herself. Her father rose abruptly, knocked over his chair, and slammed a fist on the table, not at me, not even at her, into the space between us, as if the impact alone might shatter the reality before him. Elisa didn't speak. She just stared at the flash drive, jaw clenched, frozen in the realization that the web she had spun was gone now, torn apart strand by strand, with nowhere left to hide. I simply said, "You lied to all of us. And now I'm done." She dropped to her knees, literally, no exaggeration. She whispered my name like a prayer, like the sound of it might bring back everything she had carelessly destroyed, but I turned away. Because some things, once cracked, can never be made whole again, no matter how tightly you try to piece them back together. The next morning, she was gone. Her parents had taken her with them. No goodbye. No final plea. Just a quiet door closing behind them. And for the first time in what felt like years, I stood in that apartment alone, not triumphant, not relieved. For the first time in a long time, I stood in my own home and didn't feel like an uninvited guest. She had taken very little with her. A suitcase, maybe two. What remained was everything she'd left behind, the small, thoughtless pieces of a life we no longer shared. A pair of earrings on the windowsill. A scarf draped over the back of a chair. A half-used bottle of shampoo in the shower. I didn't throw anything away, at least not right then. I just sat down at the edge of the bed and allowed myself to breathe. That evening, I went for a walk. The sky was already pulling the light away, and the city hummed with its usual rhythm, couples walking hand in hand, streetlights flickering into amber life, the low murmur of traffic drifting in from somewhere distant but constant. I didn't have a destination in mind. I walked for hours, hands in my pockets, my steps unhurried, my thoughts stretched out in front of me like a long, dim corridor. There was no checklist now, no tasks to complete, no story to uncover. I had reached the edge of that chapter, the one defined by her voice, her betrayal, her absence, and though I didn't yet know what came next, I knew it wouldn't involve pretending anymore. That night, I made a decision. I packed a small bag, locked the door behind me, and boarded a bus before the sun had fully risen. I didn't tell anyone where I was going. I didn't even know myself. I just needed motion, new horizon, different sky. The bus was half empty, rows of tired faces, headphones in, heads leaning against cold glass. I took a window seat near the back, pulled my jacket tighter, and let the landscape roll past in silence. I didn't look at my phone, didn't check the time. I just watched fields, trees, small towns with names I didn't recognize and might never remember. I ended up near the coast, a town I hadn't visited in years, not since childhood, when family road trips still meant something, when everything felt larger and brighter and unruined. I booked a small room above a cafe, paid in cash, and let the waves outside the window replace the hum of factory alarms and the soft static of her voice in my memory. The days that followed blurred together in the best possible way. I walked the beach barefoot at dawn, felt the sting of salt air against my face, sat on weathered benches watching strangers live their lives without knowing mine had just changed. I read books I found in second-hand shops, wrote things down I hadn't said out loud, and for the first time in months, I slept and didn't think about her every minute. The pain didn't come in waves, like I expected. It came in quiet little drops. One evening, while sitting on a dock with my feet dangling over the water, a young couple walked past, laughing, clumsy, glowing with the kind of joy that's loud and soft all at once. I didn't envy them. I just watched them disappear down the boardwalk and whispered, almost without meaning to, good luck. They'd need it, but maybe they'd make it. Some people do. By the end of the second week, I knew it was time to go home. The apartment welcomed me like a familiar shadow, still quiet, still mine. I opened the windows, changed the sheets, and began putting away the things she'd left behind. The earrings, the scarf, the shampoo. I placed them in a box and set it aside. One day I'd decide what to do with it. But for now, it was enough to have it out of sight. And after everything, that was more than I'd hoped for. All I needed now is space and the quiet freedom to start living again, this time with my eyes open. Thanks for watching and for staying till the end.